I'm Dr. Swannie Jett, and I've had a passion for public health for over 30 years. Now I'm in a position to effect change, and these are the critical conversations about health and our community with people who can help me make those changes.
So my thought is you want to have the voting strength where you eventually can dictate whether or not you have a black mayor. So it hasn't happened. Currently, Louisville is one of two of the 50th largest cities in this country to not have ever elected a woman, Hispanic, or black mayor. And look, let's be clear. What we're really talking about is white supremacy.
Correct.
On a lot of levels, and people are afraid to talk about that. But when I talk about white supremacy, I'm not talking about it in these elementary cartoonish terms like the Ku Klux Klan marching around, or some white nationalists marching around in Charlottesville talking about Jews will not replace us. When I'm talking about white supremacy, I'm talking about the ideology of a single group of people, because of the color of their skin, feeling that they feel like they're the only ones who have the right to think, know, and decide. Brother Swannie, you could put a black person at the table, but if that black person that you put at that table is saying the same thing that the people who believe in white supremacist paradigms have been saying for the last 50 years, then what does it matter that that person is at the table? Correct. Clarence Thomas is going to reaffirm what you're saying. Herschel Walker is going to reaffirm what you're saying. Candace Owens is going to reaffirm what you're saying. So every space, and those are extreme examples, but every space in effect becomes the behavior.
Now what I'm noticing, and you brought up DEI, we have a lot of people being hired in these key positions, and it's a fixture, but what can they really do to make change? I mean, because I always talk about matrix substance, but what do you think? Or what is your call to action for them?
I think DEI, first of all, when you look at Atlanta, that really runs back to the 70s.
It does.
When you talk about the racial shift, because coming out of the 60s, Atlanta and Birmingham were pretty much the same towns.
Right.
Atlanta chose a different course, and it became what it became. It became a black mecca because it had some black leadership, and it had some people who had some historical awareness and courage. Right. Same things kind of happened 20 years ago. Louisville and Austin, Texas were pretty much the same towns. And so different choices were made, and you see the direction that they're going. Now, to DEI, I think a lot of these DEI positions are largely propaganda. Okay. When you really think about it. And I think that there are a few major problems with DEI as it's being used right now. As far as the work that I do against anti-black racism, DEI is kind of a continuation of multiculturalism from the 80s. Right. And so you saw the multicultural movement even in higher education. You saw these black cultural centers, for instance. Right. They were destroyed, and they renamed them multicultural centers. And so they took anybody who was not white and they lumped them into one group. And so it was a way, because black people are the most hated people in this country. Right. It was a way to avoid any conversations about anti-black racism. DEI, the way it's being handled, is a continuation of that. Again, the lumping of all of these groups under this diversity, equity, and inclusion umbrella. I've sat in DEI sessions. I literally sat in a session where a DEI officer was doing a presentation at the University of Louisville. Spoke for right at a half hour. Black people were never mentioned, not once. Not once. So it seems to me that those of us concerned about the fortunes and the struggles of black people need to be very concerned about that, and that our interests can be ignored. The University of Louisville, where I work, went from 2 years ago under a former president, claiming that she wanted it to be a premier anti-racist university, and all of that was coming off the murder of Breonna Taylor. Now, that same institution is fiercely committed to never mentioning race, if you pay attention to what's going on there. Right. And certainly not mentioning anything about black folk. In fact, they're dismantling anything that specifically speaks to black people. The second problem is looking at some of the people nationwide who are occupying these positions.
Correct.
And I'm looking at some, even the black ones, like, what are your credentials?
Right.
What is the work that you really did, and what courage do you have?
Right.
If you're a black DEI officer and you scared to talk about black folk, if you're a black DEI officer and you ain't put in legitimate study of American and global history and how black people fit into that,
right.
If you can't have a legitimate conversation, you know, in this hemisphere from the Haitian Revolution on up, I'm sorry, but I don't think you're legit. And so when these companies and schools trot those types of people out there, that's a little more than propaganda.
And the interesting thing you bring up is, you and I know, because we do the research behind them and say, what impact can they really have?
Yeah.
And is it just a face?
Yeah.
Do they have the credentials? Because most of the time, to be in our position, you got to have the credentials to match.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you'll be called out.
And the courage, right, Swannie?
Yeah.
Because that's really important.
Yeah.
You can have a PhD and be the smartest person in the world, but if you're scared and you're going to shrink in moments of crisis where your people are concerned, what good are you?
Right.
So, and that's a difficult combination to find, man. A lot of times we'll see people with credentials and they're doing really well individually,
right.
But they are not interested in any type of collective movement. They're not interested in challenging any system. They're interested in what they can get out of that system.
Right.
And then a lot of times we'll see brothers and sisters who have the courage, but they don't have the credentials to get into those spaces. So it's the credentials on one hand and it's the courage on the other. And I think we got to stop celebrating people because we're still enamored with black faces in high places.
Right.
And our black people don't love black people.
Okay.
You know, and we don't want to call that by name. For instance, Daniel Cameron. You know, that's a great example. One of my old students. And people bristle when you mention names. Daniel knows what he is, and I love him. I love him as an individual.
Right.
Ideologically, though, he's an enemy of black people.
Right.
And we have to be comfortable saying that.
So, I still think we're at a critical point where we could talk about this to the next 10 years. What can we do in the next 3 to 4 years to make some significant progress in the West End?
A 2019 Harvard study concluded that most DEI, or diversity, equity, inclusion programs, were highly ineffective at changing white male behavior towards minorities.
This episode of CEO Live Talks is brought to you by Park National Bank. Pay with confidence. Your Park debit card is the fast, safe, smart way to pay this holiday season. Get more details online at parknationalbank.com.
Happy holidays to everyone. Please remember to continue to make sure that you're healthy and happy during these holiday seasons. Stop by to see us at Park Duval Community Health Center. We give flu shots. We also do your COVID vaccines and just general wellness checkups. We look forward to seeing you.
My Park Duval Community Health Center is right here.
Communities in our name.
My Park Duval Community Health Center is right here.
You're always on time.
Because we serve the community.
My Park Duval Community Health Center is right here.
Park Duval Community Health Center, providing quality health care, one person, one family, one neighborhood at a time.
Are you a healthcare professional considering new opportunities? Are you just new to the market? Or are you someone just looking for a change? Go to pdchc.org today and check out our many career options. Why not serve your community?
Hola, mi nombre es Miguel, asistente médico en la clínica Park Duval Community Health Center, el departamento de adultos. Quiero desearle a todos nuestros pacientes de habla hispana una feliz Navidad y en estos tiempos de de COVID, de influenza. So, por favor, necesitamos que tengan su vacuna del COVID y la vacuna de la influenza. Es muy importante para mantenernos sanos todos. Gracias.
This episode is sponsored by Black Jockey's Lounge, an upscale, fun, and unique restaurant and bar in the heart of downtown Louisville, 630 South 4th Street. Visit blackjockey'slounge.com. All right, so for a 23-year-old here in the city of Louisville, what's missing? Like, what would make your city a better place to live?
I feel like we just need more things to do, like more buildings, more stuff for the youth, more stuff where they can keep the youth out of trouble, because there's a lot of trouble going on in the city because of the youth, so stuff like that.
Workplace diversity training first emerged in the mid-1960s following the introduction of the Equal Employment Laws and Affirmative Action.
If you're a black DEI officer and you scared to talk about black folk, if you're a black DEI officer and you ain't put in legitimate study of American and global history and how black people fit into that,
right.
If you can't have a legitimate conversation, in this hemisphere from the Haitian Revolution on up, I'm sorry, but I don't think you're legit. And so when these companies and schools trot those types of people out there, that's a little more than propaganda.
And the interesting thing you bring up is, you and I know because we do the research behind them and say, what impact can they really have?
Yeah.
And is it just a face?
Yeah.
Or do they have the credentials? Because most of the time, to be in our position, you got to have the credentials to match.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you'll be called out.
And the courage, right, Swannie?
Yeah.
Because that's really important.
Yeah.
You can have a PhD and be the smartest person in the world, but if you're scared and you're going to shrink in moments of crisis where your people are concerned, what good are you?
Right.
So, and that's a difficult combination to find, man. A lot of times we'll see people with credentials and they're doing really well individually,
right.
But they are not interested in any type of collective movement. They're not interested in challenging any system. They're interested in what they can get out of that system.
Right.
And then a lot of times we'll see brothers and sisters who have the courage, but they don't have the credentials to get into those spaces. So it's the credentials on one hand and it's the courage on the other. And I think we got to stop celebrating people because we're still enamored with black faces in high places.
Right.
And our black people don't love black people.
Okay.
And we don't want to call that by name.
Right.
For instance, Daniel Cameron. That's a great example. One of my old students.
Right.
And people bristle when you mention names. Daniel knows what he is, and I love him. I love him as an individual.
Right.
Ideologically, though, he's an enemy of black people.
Right.
And we have to be comfortable saying that.
So I still think we're at a critical point where we could talk about this to the next 10 years. What can we do in the next 3 to 4 years to make some significant progress in the West End?
I think first of all, we kind of need to go to this Paulo Freire model of having culture circles and educational circles where for free, people like myself, people like you and others are pulling in citizens to talk about the key issues that are facing the black community and be able to contextualize those issues so that black people understand what's happening to them.
Right.
And in understanding what's happening to them, not just the political consequences and the educational consequences and the social consequences and the economic consequences and the health consequences and putting all those things in silos, but understand that all these things are related.
Right.
All of this stuff impacts, with the work that you're doing, it all impacts our health, impacts our psychological health, impacts our physical health. There's a reason black people suffer all kinds of maladies to a greater extent than others. There's a reason our lifespans are shorter.
Right.
There's a reason we suffer, stress at elevated levels and ulcers and everything else. So I think, one, it's very, very important to have those conversations and to develop some type of trust and come up with legitimate strategies to address those things. So if a politician comes into your neighborhood or to your church, you know the right questions to ask.
Right.
And don't just continue to tell our people to go vote. And I voted in every election since I was 18 years old. Stop telling us to just go vote. Give us somebody that we, are enthusiastic about voting for rather than just voting against another candidate. So we got to get involved earlier.
The interesting thing you bring up, as I was driving here today, There are parts of the West End that look worse now today than it did in 95 when I moved here. The health outcomes of African American men are still worse today than when I arrived in 95. It has not changed. The same food that we eat is still the same on the West End. Fast food restaurants, not a lot of healthy foods. We still have food deserts. We still have policies in place that have not been changed since we talked about this in the 90s. So I'm very skeptical on what can be changed.
Yep.
Can we actually get the mayor and our council people to make that change?
Now that's another question. And it is a very serious question to be engaged.
Right.
It could be that Louisville is a lost space. And we've seen that historically. You look at Ida B. Wells at the turn of the century in Memphis, and she told black people in Memphis at that time, look, we got to get out of here. This is not going to change for us in the foreseeable future. And so let's face it, not just in the West End of Louisville.
Right.
You know, you go from city to city, town to town,
Southside Chicago,
throughout this country, and you see these cities look like different cities when you go into the predominantly black parts of these cities. Let's face it, a lot of that is because of political and social negligence, because black people are seen as an expendable population.
Right.
And so the West End, that's seen as an expendable population. Black people overall. What does America really want us to do?
Right.
You talk about police, they want them to serve and protect, at least, you know, in theory.
Right.
For black people, a lot of folks still see us as folk who should serve and entertain.
Right.
But outside of that, nothing that matters to us matters to them.
Right.
And so, you know, as Gunnar Myrdal said, racism is a white man's problem.
Right.
White people created it here. And it's not racist to say that, but black people suffer the consequences.
Right.
But whenever you have white-controlled spaces, and Louisville is one,
right.
How much concern is there among the terminal decision makers in this space about black suffering? And what can black people really do to fight back? And especially what can they do to fight back when you consistently see the few propaganda-like token positions that are created for black entree into these conversations be occupied by black people who do not have the interest or the will to fight back. So it could be, and I fear that this is more of a probability than not, that nothing is going to change in Louisville for the foreseeable future.
In 2022, people of color made up 42% of the U.S. population. However, only 28% of the candidates in 2022 general election were minorities.
This episode of CEO Live Talks is brought to you by Park National Bank. Pay with confidence. Your Park debit card is the fast, safe, smart way to pay this holiday season. Get more details online at parknationalbank.com.
Hi, my name is Latasha Wilson. I work at Park Duval Behavior Health on 3015 Wilson Avenue. And we understand that holidays can be overwhelming and depressing for you. If you need any cure or anything from us, please feel free to stop by and see us at Park Duval. We look forward to seeing you, and happy holidays to you and your family from our family at Park Duval Community Health Center.
Hi, it's Brittany from Park Duval Community Health Center Pharmacy. We wanted to wish you a happy holidays from all of your pharmacy team. For amended hours during the holidays, please check our Facebook page.
Do you ever think Louisville will elect a mayor of minority or female?
I think that, the atmosphere is proper for perhaps a American Negro or African American mayor at some point in time. I think what needs to be done, though, is, an individual that has the proper mentality and compassion for our community, and also the acumen to be able to invite, corporations and other investors and venture capitalists into this community to make investments and start opening up businesses so that it creates job opportunities for the less fortunate and the people now that are struggling, that are just looking for job opportunities, but they're just non-informed right now. And I think also the initiative ought to be by our state legislature and the governor and the mayor and city councils and everything to, initiate some sort of initiative to get some vocational aspects involved to subsidize that, so that we retool ourselves in America. Because if we don't retool our workforce, we're not going to be able to compete.
So it could be, and I fear that this is more of a probability than not, that nothing is going to change in Louisville for the foreseeable future.
Well, I think if we bring more like-minded people, like me and you, like Sadiqa.
But why would we come, right? Why? I mean, and that's a real talk. That's a real conversation. Why would we come, and why would we stay?
Right.
We certainly have familial interests. I mean, I have a high schooler. My daughter is in 9th grade now. But once my daughter gets out of high school, then I wasn't, as a father, I was never interested in long-distance parenting. So I was going to be here until my daughter gets out of high school and goes on to college. But then, what's really holding me in Louisville, right? And so you can't have it both ways.
Right.
If Kentucky works very, very hard to be a white ethno state, when you look at it politically, Louisville is the gem of Kentucky, but that's all relative. But if you ain't serious about having a situation that black people can enter into and thrive and live with dignity, and comfort, where their humanity is reaffirmed, then why would they stay?
Right.
Why would they come? Because you ain't doing nothing but stressing them, you're dehumanizing them, you're cutting their lives short, you're wasting their talent.
Correct.
If you get a very talented black person who ain't willing to live on their knees, and then you punish them for that, whether it be in city government or the University of Louisville or wherever, why would that talented black person stay and just be wasted?
But here's the thing. I came back to Louisville for one reason.
Because you wanted to hang out with me.
That's right. That's right. I came back to bring Park Duval to prominence.
Right.
To elevate it. Somebody asked me one time when I became the health commissioner, health director in Bullitt County. And
I was wondering why you did that.
Yeah, a lot of people was. And they said, they gonna hang you. They gonna shoot you. My daughter called me crying that somebody was gonna hurt me. And I said, if not me, then who? Because people don't often get an opportunity to see African American men intelligent in those key positions. Mm-hmm. We have to invest in our African American men and women, go back, invest in the community, bring people here that are committed to change. We have to reaffirm our position that, hey, If we can solve the issues in Louisville, we can actually begin to solve them in other places. And that's the key. I don't want to run away from the situation. It actually takes strong people to come back to Louisville and dedicate their life to something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's my mission.
Yeah.
Dedicate your life to a mission or cause that will outlast you. Yeah. And that's your legacy as well. So this concludes the show for today. And thanks for coming. See you soon.
Thank you for all the work you do, brother. It's very, very important. Much love to you, my man.
Since 2000, non-whites have been the largest growing demographic amongst eligible voters. During the same period, the U.S. has seen an introduction of voter ID laws in 34 states. There are 32.7 million registered black voters in America, with the highest voter turnout of all minorities at 51%.
My Park Duval Community Health Center is right here.
Communities in our name.
My Park Duval Community Health Center is right here.
You're always on time.
Because we serve the community.
My Park Duval Community Health Center is right here.
Park Duval Community Health Center, providing quality health care, one person, one family, one neighborhood at a time.
Hello, my name is Zakia Williams. I am the Director of Outreach and Enrollment. Currently, open enrollment is going on to January the 15th of 2023. If you do not currently have health insurance, please come and see us here at Park Duval Community Health Center in room 204. Once again, if you do not have health insurance, please come and see us here at Park Duval Community Health Center.
This episode of CEO Live Talks is brought to you by Park National Bank. Pay with confidence. Your Park debit card is the fast, safe, smart way to pay this holiday season. Get more details online at parknationalbank.com.